The centrality of the dialogical form. Plato wrote in dialogues because that's how his philosophy had to be presented. The drama, the character, the setting, all of that matters as much as the argument. And that old project of extracting the arguments, putting them on the blackboard, and evaluating from them for their logical consistency was a very misplaced misreading of Plato. The second is the importance of what's called non-propositional knowing, transformative insight, things like that. And the idea is that Plato was using the first, the dialogical form, to afford the second, the non-propositional insight, in order to bring about transformation, transformative experience. So those are the three things I want to pick up on. The point about the circling practice is to get people into an interpersonal flow state. What you're basically doing is you're not just communicating. What you're doing is you're trying to be mindfully present of your state, and you're trying to have mindsight into that person's state. That's insight into people's mental states, Dan Siegel. And then I adjust my behavior so that I get some insight into your mental state, and I adjust my behavior so that you can see into me. And then you see better into me, and then you adjust your behavior so I can see into you, and we reciprocally open, and we resonate like this, and it becomes a flow state. And then you do it with a whole group of people. That's called circling. It's invented by my good friend Guy Senstock. And we have people longitudinally reporting to us how much this practice is systematically transferring to many domains of their life, and systemically transforming their inner alignment, their inner sense between all these kinds of knowing. One of the most interesting things, because it was unexpected, is people reliably will say things like this: I found a kind of intimacy, connectedness. I found a kind of intimacy I was always looking for, but I didn't know about. It sounds like Platonic anamnesis. They were always looking about it, but they didn't know that they were. The next thing they say, it's called the we space. The third factor, we call it the logos. The collective intelligence becomes a palpable presence above and beyond the individual participants. They get a sense of the additional we, the additional logos that shows up, and everybody is participating in it, but nobody is making it, nobody owns it. It has a life of its own, and it's guiding everybody. And people start to feel an intimacy with that evolving presence of the logos. And then they start to report that in that intimate relationship, not only to each other and to the logos, they get a sense of a deep connectedness to being, to reality. They start to report a different relationship to virtue. They say, I used to think of a virtue just as like an idea. You know, like Ivan Illich always knew he was going to die the way 2 + 2 = 4. But one day, Ivan Illich realized, I'm going to die, you know, in the Tolstoy story. People try and grasp it like that. They say, like, I thought I knew what honesty was. And, you know, I was honest. And now, and they talk about, they have experiences of awe about the virtue. These experiences are often described in religious and spiritual language, irrespective of what belief formation the person is coming from. They can be atheists, they could be a Christian, it doesn't matter. They will start using this language. They will start expressing the awe, they will start expressing this intense meaning in life, this intense connectedness. And like I say, they report back to us that this has changed them. The meaning crisis in our culture, that's not going to be addressed by giving people propositions. That's one of the main arguments I'm making here. They have to do practices that give them this profound sense of connectedness to themselves, to each other, to reality, to answer the three meaning questions. So it's doing that. And I try to indicate, although I had to do it quite quickly, this practice sits within an entire ecology of practices. There are mindfulness practices, there are movement practices, there are dialogical practices. There's a whole set of practices, a whole ecology of practice. The ultimate telos is to create ecologies of practices sitting in living communities that give people a viable way of cultivating wisdom, cultivating meaning in life, and responding to the meaning crisis. That's the telos. I want to give people a way of bringing this into the present that can alleviate the meaning crisis that is destroying lives in an ever-increasing number, on an ever-increasing intensity. I'll be a little bit more provocative. I think if you want Platonism to be a living tradition, and it it doesn't shape itself to address the meaning crisis in practices, non-academic practices, that can offer a beautification of a Platonic way of life, it's not going to survive as a tradition, because the meaning crisis is washing away everything else in its path. It is a tsunami in terms of its corrosive effects. And so the spontaneous imaginal, our gestures and our conceptual metaphors are transparent. They're like the lens of my glasses. It's often very powerful for people to notice the spontaneous, analogies and poesis that is in their gestures and their metaphors that are running through what they're saying. And so one of the things you have to get people to practice on, especially the midway, is to pay attention to the nonverbal, pay attention to the spontaneous imaginal, and give it back to people in a powerful way. Because people get very focused on the content of what is said. And so with practice and training, though, people get good at stepping back and giving proper space for that to take place and to influence how the proposal is evolving.
It seems that what you're doing is describing to us a ritual practice
Yes.
that has a transformative effect. But we're not doing the ritual. We're listening to you describe the ritual.
Yes, you want to do the ritual sometime?
Yes. We're missing some essential element that really is at the heart of what you're communicating. That you can describe this, but unless we're part of this circling process with at least 4 people, we're not going to really know what you mean.
Well, of course, propositional and non-propositional knowing. That would be like just reading the Kama Sutra and never doing anything else. But there's a difference also about talking about ritual, which we need to be doing, and speaking from ritual, which I'm also trying to do. And I'm trying to afford a language that does the latter and not just the former.
Right, okay.